Friends, depression is a disease that comes into our life from time to time. Depression, sadness, and loneliness surround us, unable to overcome this situation in life. Many sink into the sea of despair and lives a fruitless, depressed life. And many may be able to overcome this disappointment of life and lead a happy life. But that number is not very high. Depression comes into everyone's life. Everyone has to feel the taste of failure. But some can overcome that situation and move forward, while many can't. Depression is a fatal disease in today's world. Almost all people in this world suffer from depression at one time or another due to some reason or other. Maybe you too have been a victim of depression. But why does this depression come into people's lives? Depression comes into life only when the actual situation and mental state do not match. When your mind wants one thing and the actual situation presents something else, a dark cloud of depression comes into life. We have to learn to match our mental state with real situation. Gautama Buddha said, "If there is suffering in our life, then there is a reason for suffering. If there is a cause for suffering, there is also a way to relieve suffering. And if there is a way to relieve from suffering, there is also a path to find that way to relieve from suffering. So, there is a way to get rid of depression. There is a way out. In today's episode, we will try to find that way through a story. There was a man in a village whose life was full of despair and anxiety. His entire life was spent in depression and anxiety. He felt that there was nothing but despair in his life, that he had no life. When he has not married, he thought of getting married. But when he got married, he was worried and depressed about married life. He was thinking about running his family, about money and wealth. Then he was depressed about not having a baby. But when the baby was born, he was worried about the future of the baby. No matter what he did, he was not free from depression and anxiety. Then one day he saw some monks. There was no despair or worry on the face of the monks. How happy they looked! He thought that the life of monks was great. It seemed to him there is no sorrow in the life of a monk. There is no trouble in their life. They are always in joy and happiness. There is no anxiety or depression in their life. He decided that he would soon take up the monastic life. And so he did. He left his family and became a monk to get rid of all the frustrations and worries of life. He took sannyas and became a disciple of a Gurudev. Now he lived in an ashram where his new life seemed quite good. well-organized ashram, clean and tidy. Everyone always had a smile on their face. Everyone was happy. After spending some time like this, anxiety and depression entered his life again. This time the worry was not like before. All his disappointment and worry were about the hermit's life. His life was changed, but not depression and anxiety. Anxiety is not a city or town that one can live at will. Now his anxiety was related to ashram's life. He was worried about following the rules of the ashram life. He was worried about acquiring knowledge. And most of all, he was worried about how he would ask for alms. Now he started to miss his family very much. He thought, there was anxiety and depression in my family life, and there was anxiety and depression in ashram life. So what is the use of being a monk? If there is anxiety and depression on both sides, then my family life will be better for me. He decided he would run away from the ashram. One day he took a chance and tried to escape from the ashram. But Guruji got to see him. Gurudev called him and said, "The one from whom you are running is in your mind. So what is the use of running away? How long will you be on the run?" Hearing Gurudev's words, he folded his hands and said, "Gurudev, my life was full of depression and anxiety in my family life. And even after coming here, my life is full of depression. So I am going back to my family life." Gurudev said, "It's all right. You go back, but you leave the anxiety and depression here. If you go back to the family life and lead a depressed life, what is the use of coming here?" The disciple said, "Gurudev, is this possible? Can this happen? Can despair be removed from my life, Gurudev? Can despair be removed from my life forever?" Gurudev said, "Why is it not possible? Of course it is possible. Before that, you go and find a person who has no worries or depression in his life. Only if you find such a person, I will solve your problem forever." The disciple was very happy to hear these words of Gurudev. He folded his hands and said, "I immediately present such a person before you, Gurudev." Saying this, he went out in search of a such person who had no worries, no despair. He wandered through the streets of the town, asking many people, "Do you have any depression or anxiety in your life?" But no one said that. There was no worry or depression in their life. Rather, people became more serious and said, "The most anxiety and depression are in my life." And they did not stop just saying this. They began to give him various reasons and descriptions of why they were depressed. From morning to evening, he roamed the streets of the city, but such a person is not found who doesn't have any worries in his life. Then a wise man said to him, "Only a drunkard has no worries or despair in his life. He forgets everything all day long in his intoxication. You should rather find such a drunkard. He heard this and thought, that's correct. It's a great solution. Let's go find a drunkard. Then he looked for a drunkard and soon found a mature drunkard. He was drunk all day. Now the disciple said, I heard that your life is free from anxiety and depression. You live in joy and happiness all day long. Is there really no anxiety or depression in your life? The drunkard said, Despair? What is it? What is anxiety? I do not know what these things are. Hearing this, the disciple was very happy. He thought, then finally I found one who has no depression and anxiety in his life. Then the drunkard said, I have only one thought. How can I buy wine? Just a little wine will do, and I have no more worries. Do you have any money? I have taken all the money from my wife. I have spent all the money on buying wine. Can you give me some money? Hearing this, all hope was extinguished in the mind of the disciple. He was very disappointed. Then, is there no person in the world who has no despair, no anxiety in his mind? So is all his effort in vain? Does he himself have no way to get rid of despair? Thinking about this, he sat down on a stone. All the light in front of his eyes was extinguished. There was only darkness and darkness. At that time, a small boy came and pulled the disciple's hand and said, I am very hungry. Gurudev, please give me something to eat. The disciple said, You are such a small child. You also have anxiety and depression in your life. Then how will adults be free from anxiety? The boy said, I don't have any of that, only hunger. Please give me some food. The disciple took out some food from his bag and gave it to the boy. While the boy was eating with great joy, the disciple hurried to the ashram and stood before Gurudev. He said to Gurudev, Gurudev, I have searched a lot, but I have not found anyone who does not have anxiety or depression in his life. All people have some or other anxiety. He who has no wealth thinks of getting rich, and he who has wealth wants to get more wealth. He who does not have love is worried about getting love, and he who has love is worried about having fallen in love. Some are worried about not having work. Some are worried about work pressure. The worry of the sick person is when he will get well and live a beautiful life. Thus, every person is worried for some reason or the other. It seems, Gurudev, none of us can get rid of this anxiety. Gurudev smiled and said, It is possible to get rid of it, but for that you have to do a little work. Saying this, Gurudev brought some wet wood and placed it in front of the disciple. He said, Now set fire to these pieces of wood. The disciple tried many times to set the wood on fire, but it did not catch fire. The disciple said, This wood is wet. How can it catch fire? Gurudev said, What will you do now? Will you dry these pieces of wood in the sun and try to set them on fire? Or will you sit and worry in despair as to what I will do next? If you worry, Will these pieces of wood catch fire? Or with a little thought, will you bring new dry pieces of wood and set them on fire? The disciple said, Gurudev, you are right, but it is also true that there is anxiety in every aspect of life. Gurudev said, there is no anxiety in all aspects of life. Anxiety is in you. Anxiety arises in you all the time. And where anxiety arises, there is no success. Work is not done properly there, and you end up feeling more anxious and frustrated because things are not going right. The disciple said, if things are going right, everything is fine, then we don't worry. If everything is as we like, we don't worry. For example, if the wood is dry instead of wet, then we don't worry. Then it depends on the wood whether we worry or not. Gurudev said, if we accept from the beginning that dry wood is not always available, then we can arrange for dry wood in advance. And if we get wet wood, we can calmly think why wet wood is available and not dry wood. And we can arrange to dry those wood with patience. We can get to the bottom of the problem and find a solution without getting bogged down in imagination and speculation. But we don't do that. Instead, we make the problem bigger and get involved in it. The disciple said, Gurudev, please explain it to me. Gurudev said, why did you leave your family? The disciple said, I was very worried there. I was very disappointed. Gurudev said, is there no anxiety in the ashram? No despair here? The disciple said, Gurudev, there is anxiety and depression in the ashram too. Gurudev said, if you are thinking about all the work, how can I do this work? When will I do it? I want to do it, but how? I want to solve it, but can I? I think I can't. It is very difficult to work. Why does this happen to me? I hide somewhere. I don't want anyone to see me. Is everyone watching me? It's such a difficult problem. I can't solve it. It would be better if it wasn't like this. Do you always think so? The disciple said, yes, Gurudev. I always feel that way. Gurudev said, because the problem is not outside. The problem is inside you. You keep creating unnecessary worries in your mind. Don't know how many things you imagine that may not actually happen. And thinking about these things, you are worried. You become depressed. You will have no more worries that day. You will understand that there is a problem and it has a solution. You have to work to solve it. You will get the result. The day you understand this essence of life, you will have no more worries or despair. The disciple said, Gurudev, you are right. I met a boy and I asked, do you have anxiety or depression in your life? He said, there is no anxiety or depression, only hunger. Then I did not understand that the problem is hunger, not anxiety. Now I understand that hunger is the problem, and the problem of the hunger may be solved, not that of anxiety or depression. Friends, try to match the situation and mindset, understand the problem, and work to solve it. You will see that anxiety and depression will disappear from your life forever. And let us know what you think about it. Stay well. Thank you.